What is up, guys? This is Misfit. I am back with final week of the regular season preview, week 29. Before we dive in, I'd like to thank everybody out there on YouTube for joining. If you're new, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit the alert bell. I do Overwatch League content a few times a week. And if you're in podcast land, thank you very much for joining us as well. Let's dive in. We don't have too much news. We covered a lot of that in the previews and all that kind of stuff. We're going to jump into week 29. A lot of the games don't really technically mean anything, but we have a lot of seeding stuff that we can sort out with a few of the teams in the middle. The Gladiators, the Valiant, the Atlanta Reign, they're all jockeying for some position, and it's fairly important for them to get to, you always want the higher seed. You get to play the lesser team because we're not having the picking and all that kind of stuff going on right now. But let's get to it. All right, so real quick, we talked about the standings. So the teams that we're going to be looking at a lot this week, there's some stuff in APAC, especially with Seoul and Hangzhou. That's a huge match. We'll talk about that in a second. But in NA, we're going to have a lot of teams jockeying for position. But the teams that can move up and down, we have the Valiant, the Reign, the Gladiators. Valiant are 11-9, the Reign are 10-9, and the Gladiators are 9-9. Now the Gladiators got 3 matches this week against the Reign, the Valiant, and the Mayhem. So they have a really rough week, and they have a lot that they need to accomplish if they want to get up there to the 5 seed. They could potentially be the 5 seed, or they could drop below the Fuel if the Fuel happen to do something this weekend. And the Fuel have Paris and Toronto. They play Toronto first, and then they have Paris. So Gladiators at least know what's going on there with Dallas, but they need to win, I would say, 2 out of the 3 games that they have this weekend, and they're not going to be easy. But let's go over the schedule. Friday. All right, guys. So this is going up a little late. You're going to hear it probably right before the matches, somewhere in the early afternoon on Friday we're at. So we have, starting off the weekend, we have the Vancouver Titans taking on the Boston Uprising, followed by the Mayhem versus the Gladiators. Then on Saturday, we have the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Seoul Dynasty. Big match there. That's for the 4 and 5 positions in APAC. And then we have London taking on New York. Then we go back to NA. We have Washington taking on the San Francisco Shock. Dallas taking on Toronto. The Gladiators taking on the Atlanta Reign. And then finishing up the evening on Saturday, we have the Valiant taking on the Vancouver Titans. Moving on to Sunday, we have the Seoul Dynasty taking on the London Spitfire. The Dallas Fuel taking on Paris when we head back to NA in the afternoon. And then we have the Shock taking on the Reign. And then we have the final battle of LA for the season. We have the Los Angeles Valiant taking on Los Angeles Gladiators. We have some key matches going on this week. Some big matches, most of them involving the Gladiators, because they have the most to gain or lose in this weekend. And they're playing the Mayhem on Friday. Them and the Mayhem have had some good matches. Florida somehow has become rivals, kind of, with the Valiant, just because they're kind of on the same footing and same level and all that. And I think there's the same thing is starting to happen with the Gladiators, if you really look at it. Now, this is the last week with the Hero Pools. This is the Mayhem's last game until the playoffs. I don't know what to expect in these games, honestly. Teams are going to play the meta, but I don't know if they're necessarily practicing this meta. Because the way it looks on ladder and stuff like that, you're going to have to grind some Roadhog possibly, and some other things. So these guys might be looking, for the future. But the Gladiators want the better seed. So, they may be playing for the now. The Mayhem might be kind of mail it in or something like that. You don't want to tip your hand as to what you want to play. We all know what these teams are good at playing and what they're not anyway. I know they get involved in a lot of the... they get involved with the mind games and the we're not going to show you what we're doing and all this kind of stuff. This week, no, everybody knows you're going to play whatever is available. Next week is going to be totally different, playing on a totally different patch, or 2 weeks from now, playing on a totally different patch. Stakes are on the line. There's all kinds of stuff going on, but there's some teams that are just going to back down and not really, I wouldn't say not try hard, but they're not going to be playing their full, like I said, like they're not going to play their full hand. But in this match, I think the Gladiators need to start the week off because it's going to be hard to win all 3 games. They need to come into this match against the Mayhem. They need to beat the Mayhem before they start even thinking about some of the other matches. So they need to go in there, and I think they match up really well right now. They're playing really good. I like the way their tank line's playing. Oj and Space are playing really well in this meta. We've had a lot of Diva, and we've had a lot of variations on some stuff. A lot of Dive, oddly enough, without the flankers. But we've had that. Florida look good until they got to map 3. I think Sideshow's the one that said they kind of get confused and they like lose focus with the deeper it goes into a match. Because if you notice with the Mayhem, they start off really strong and then they start to falter. And I think the Gladiators can take advantage of this and just, hang in the match, figure out what the Mayhem are doing, and adjust to it. Because sometimes the Mayhem don't change their strategies up or anything like that, which is bad. And that's something I said they need to work on. But also, potentially, if they start taking it to the Mayhem a little bit, they might not even care. And I'm not saying that, I'm not making an excuse for the Mayhem right here. They might not care as much as they normally would because they are locked in the 4 spot. They do have that ready to go. They might even play guys like Karayan and guys that were playing earlier in the season that haven't played in a long time. They might be playing them this week just to give them a little bit of time to get them back in case they need them or all that kind of stuff. But I think the Gladiators really need to focus in on this match, take care of business, and it also is a good measure as to where they're at because the Mayhem are kind of the gatekeeper of the top 3. Yeah, they did get beat by the Valiant, but I think overall they're better than the Valiant. The Gladiators really need to come out in this, set the tone early, and just kind of work it from there. I think they could take this match, even if there wasn't any kind of it's the last week and the Mayhem might not be focused on this match. They should be, but it's understandable if they don't focus on it. They want to get into scrims and start grinding out this meta and figuring out where they're at with that. But that is going to be a big match starting off on Friday. Well, actually, sorry. We have the battle of the 2 worst teams first on Friday of Vancouver and Boston. But the bigger picture match is the Gladiators and the Mayhem. Then it's followed up at 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time from APAC. We have Hangzhou taking on Seoul. Now, Seoul is on a run. They absolutely, they did beat London twice. But it's one of those things, and I go back to with the May Melee. People complain, the Mayhem played the Vancouver, and they played Boston twice, and all this other crap. Yeah, but you know what? What did it do? It built confidence. They went into matches. Sometimes when you play lesser teams, it's an easy win, but you can figure out what you need to do against other teams too in these scenarios. And I think Seoul did that last week with London. Hangzhou, I think Hangzhou really needs to get a win here. This is a very even match. I think Seoul is on the rise, though. Hangzhou's kind of middling right now. They aren't playing to their potential, really, which is kind of disappointing. They're not playing terrible. They're not playing great. They're just kind of... They're still in this weird feel-out phase with Architect and a couple other things going on. They just really need to start bringing things together and playing like we're expecting them to play. They need to get all their pieces in place, get everybody on the right heroes, all that stuff. They look good at times, but then there are times they look like hot garbage. Yeah, the one time recently they looked bad was against Shanghai, but who hasn't looked bad against Shanghai? this is a very winnable match for both teams, really. I would like to see Hangzhou keep playing QOQ, get him more integrated. They bring Sasson into play. Zarya, she's not available this week. We might see more of that Sasson play coming up in the next for the playoffs, just because of the way things are going in ranked. I doubt it's going to mirror what's going to go on in the league. They're going to figure something out with these heroes, and it's going to change the meta on rank too, like it does sometimes. Sometimes you get into higher levels of play. I mean, we didn't have GOATs until someone in tier 3 decided to run it tier 2 with the GOATs team. So and then we had things like Clockwork Vendetta change the meta up and stuff like that. Something like that could happen in this, where they figure something out with the new meta. But all that aside, Hangzhou needs to come out. They need to play more cohesively. They need to be more consistent with their ult management. And what Seoul needs to do is continue what they did last week. And, I harp on them for relying on Prophet to do Prophet things. If they have Gesture and Tuyu, who looks really, really good together, if they're playing like they did last week, and Badosin plays decently, and, Toby just stays attached to Prophet, it's going to be hard to beat them, because if you get Prophet in the right headspace and he starts going off, it's really hard to beat them. And it feels to me like, just for the brief amount of time, Tuyu and Gesture are working really well together. So that's a positive for them. They are looking a lot better. And like we said, yes, they played London twice. They're playing them again this week, too. So for Hangzhou really needs to come out and win this match, because Seoul potentially is going to get a win other than this match. So I think they want to come out and beat them just to get ahead of them in the standings, with the percentage points and all that, because they're going to have an uneven amount of games, or the way it works. But now let's move on to the last match we're going to talk about a little bit. We got the Battle of LA, final Battle of LA for 2020. At least regular season Battle of LA. So both of these teams are on the rise. Both looked really good last week. I liked how the Valiant came back against the Mayhem. They proved a lot to me. They're pretty resilient, and their players are better than we thought at the beginning of the year. And they're just out every week to prove everybody wrong, which is fantastic. But KSP went absolutely ham on the Mayhem. Once they kind of adopted the Soul style with the Ashe and that dive, which I like. I didn't think it was going to work, or I didn't think anyone was going to at least try anything. But they need to come out and just continue playing the way they did against the Mayhem in the latter half of that match. They got kind of owned in the beginning of it, but the Mayhem are a really good team, but they turned it around really good. And a lot of that's coaching, a lot of that's the players using their abilities to switch things up and in their mind and everything. It's one of those things that some of the good teams like the Valiant and even teams like the Gladiators, they trust their players to make switches when necessary to win a match. They don't just ram their heads against the wall the entire way through because they practice this one strat. If they feel something else can work, they will do it and will win a match. It's what it's all about. But this match in particular, I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be great. The way these teams are playing, we have Oj and Space, like we talked about earlier, playing really well. We spent a lot of time on the Gladiators. Birdring playing great. Mirror's been playing good on some of the things he's been doing. Their support line's always good. And, you have Mirror and Kevster that you can throw in there. I like it when they have Kevster in there. He has a really good hero pool. Mirror has a decent enough hero pool to play some of the things that, that Birdring or Kevster can't play. I think their rotation is looking really good. It didn't look good a few weeks back, but that was before Kevster. I think he's made a big difference on this team. And I'm looking forward to seeing, what they do against the Valiant. Now, the Valiant, like we were talking about earlier, I think they're everyone focuses on KSB and KSF. But I think McGravy is low-key one of the MVPs on this team. He could be, considered maybe not in the MVP race for the whole league, but he's one of the most improved. Or see, I really liked him to begin with when he was on the Mayhem. I didn't think he got a fair shot there. And before they went all Korean, they had him and Apply and a couple of other guys that are on the Valiant. I thought he stood out to me as one of the better players that they had last year. I mean, it's worked out for both teams now, so we have that. I think their support line's been a little bit underrated too with the Valiant, especially Lastro. I think he's looked really good when he's been in there. I'm looking for this match is going to be to end the week and end the regular season. I think this is going to be a fantastic match. It's kind of a coin flip for me. We'll see who I pick coming up in the McRightclick picks. Last regular season week. It's that time. We're going to do the McRightclick picks, where I go down the whole schedule, pick all of the matches, and potentially come out over 500. Barring any... There's not enough APAC games to screw me up too much this week, so let's go down the whole schedule, and we're going to pick all the matches. All right, here we go. Starting off the week, Friday, August 21st, we have the Vancouver Titans taking on the Boston Uprising in the battle for the basement, if you want to call it that. I'm going to go Titans. They've looked better the last couple weeks. They beat Atlanta last week, and they should be able to take care of Boston. Boston's just terrible. Nothing really to talk about there. Next match, we have Gladiators of the Mayhem and the start of the Gladiators Gauntlet. As much as I don't want to go against my team in this, I'm going to take the Gladiators. The match means more. I think Florida could be looking forward. I mean, yeah, you want to win. You want to bounce back from last week. But this game really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I'm taking the Gladiators. Next match, we go to APAC, 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, August 22nd. We have the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Seoul Dynasty. I'm going to jump back on the Soul train here, and we're gonna take the Dynasty over the Spark. I just think they look a little bit better in this particular meta, and enabling Profit to do Profit things is always a plus for your team, especially when you work around it and play the way they did last week. Next match in APAC, we have the London Spitfire taking on the New York Excelsior. I'm going to take New York, no questions there. No need to talk about that one. Saturday, August 22nd. 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Justice taking on the Shock, and I'm taking the Shock, and this should be Sparkle. This should be Decay's debut for the Justice, and we're going to chalk this one up as a loss. Next match, we have the Dallas Fuel taking on Toronto Defiant. This is a tough one to pick. I am going to go Dallas in this. I think Dallas has more on the line. I think they're better than Toronto right now. I'm going to take the Fuel. Next match on Saturday, we have the Gladiators taking on the Reign. I'm going to take the Gladiators in this one over the Reign. I think the Reign kind of mailed it in last week, it felt like. They were just screwing around, doing whatever. I don't see anything different coming out of them in this one, but I'm going to take the Gladiators. I think it's going to be a close match, though. I think the Reign could, if they focus, beat the Gladiators, but we'll see what happens there. Next match, we have the final match on Saturday. We have the Valiant taking on the Vancouver Titans. I'm taking the Valiant. Back to APAC on Sunday. We have the final meeting between the London Spitfire and the Seoul Dynasty. I'll take Seoul again. Maybe London gets a map. Hopefully. Who knows? Seoul will win this one easily. Next match on Sunday, Dallas Fuel versus the Paris Eternal. Back to NA. I'm going to take the Eternal. They just have too much for Dallas right now. Sunday, August 23rd, 5 p.m., we have the San Francisco Shock taking on the Atlanta Reign. I'll take the Shock in that. And the final battle of LA, I'm going to go Valiant. I think I'm going to go Valiant in this one. It's going to leave the Gladiators at 2-1. And the Valiant should, I think that would move the Valiant ahead of them, and it would be Valiant, Gladiators, and then the Reign, potentially. But that's going to do it for the McRightclick picks. And it's also going to do it for this week's preview. I'd like to thank all you guys for joining me. Everybody out there on YouTube, thank you very much for all the likes, all the subscribes, all the views you've been giving lately, and the conversations we've been having. I appreciate it very much. Everybody out there in podcast land, thank you very much for your listens and all the stuff you've been doing for me. Very greatly appreciated. That is going to do it for the regular season, guys. We are getting ready to move on to the playoffs. We're going to do some different stuff coming up in the next week, getting everybody ready for the playoffs. All of my, my thoughts on the teams, what potential metas might be. It's really up in the air right now. All that kind of stuff. Might do some tier list or, kind of a power ranking before the playoffs. Haven't decided how we're going to do that. We might do it a little bit different than we did the last time. Don't know. But that's going to do it. Thanks a lot for joining me, guys. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe. Have a good rest of your day. And I'll see you guys on the next one.